Welcome to the Cold Brew Chick podcast. I'm your chick, Rachel, a blogger and lover of all things cold brew. Join me as we discover and learn from some of the greatest minds in the cold brew industry. Not a day goes by without a cold brew by my side. Hey Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. It's that crazy holiday season. I don't know if you feel it too, but I feel like, especially this week in particular, with Christmas being on since Saturday, I feel like everything's going at like a million miles per hour. So I can't even imagine how it is for you with all of that and running a coffee business.
Yeah. I mean, for us, or for me personally, it's my wife's birthday the week prior, so 1 week before, and the week before that is my brother-in-law's birthday, and then 2 days after my wife's birthday is my mom's birthday. So,
Oh my gosh. So
so
it's like a
business aside, it's like, yeah, the
so it's like
birthdays, and then 25th is, Christmas. So, yeah, a
so it's like
lot going on for sure.
a month of craziness then.
Oh, yeah. We embrace it though. We love it.
Well, I just want to jump in. So, first of all, for people that are listening, you and I met because of the cold brew competition at Coffee Fest in Anaheim. And I'll be honest,
hmm
before the competition, I had never heard of you guys, didn't know anything about you. Then after you guys won, did a little deep dive and was like, wow, this is
Yeah.
actually a very cool coffee company. So I'd love to just first start with, your journey with coffee, how that got started. When was your first cup of coffee? What got you into it? And how did Be Bright come to be?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think growing up, coffee definitely wasn't like a big part of my life. Like, I would say probably the earliest memory of drinking coffee would probably be around high school. I would go to Coffee Bean or Starbucks and get a frappuccino or a mocha ice blended, and that would be my idea of coffee at the time. And it was even in college. I graduated from UC Riverside in
Yay.
2010,
Mm-hmm.
and coffee, specialty coffee at the time, hadn't really blown up to this, in the scene as it is today. Um, and back then, we would go to like Starbucks, but we would be ordering the same usual frappuccinos and all that stuff. And so, that was kind of my level of experience with coffee. And it wasn't until I met a few people and eventually, when I did graduate from UC Riverside, it was in 2010 at the height of the recession, and nobody was hiring at the time. And and maybe that's how people feel coming out of college, like no one's hiring me. But it really felt that way, especially during my time. And I had a business degree with a concentration in HR management, and I just wanted to get a job anywhere, but it seemed like nobody wanted to hire if you didn't have any experience. So it was kind of one of those catch-22 situations. And so, I decided, okay, I'm just going to work a year somewhere, and at least I can say I have experience working. Somewhere I could say on maybe a cover letter or in my resume, I could put something down to signify to the people, to the companies I'd be applying to, that at least have some work experience, and try to draw as much experience I can from it. And it happened to be at a local coffee shop in in LA, particularly in this neighborhood called Larchmont, and it was a coffee shop called Bricks and Scones. And it's funny because I have some history there. I used to go there as a kid, as an after school program. I used to go there, so I knew the whole family there, and they had turned it into a cafe, and they were using Intelligentsia at the time, which I had no idea what that was. And they're like, "Yeah, we're looking for a barista. If you want to work, you can work here." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, let's just try this." Also prior to that, I did have a lot of interest in the culinary side of things, and so there was some of that tie-in with coffee. I was like, "Oh, cool! I could make something for someone, and they could enjoy it." And so that there was a draw to that. And so I started my journey as a baby barista at a coffee shop called Bricks and Scones, using Intelligentsia, learning how to do pour overs. And it wasn't until 3 months in they let me onto the espresso machine, and I got to really try my hand at dialing in espresso and tasting espresso and doing latte art. And this was like early 2000 or like 2010, and it was before everyone was using scales and using the different tools that we have at our disposal. It was still kind of in the early stages of specialty coffee, and a lot of it just had to do with like feel and like just trying it out, and like by happen chance, if it tastes good, you try to chase that again. And so that was kind of my first kind of foray into coffee. Eventually, I got invited to like a local latte art competition, met the subculture of like amazing baristas and specialty coffee, nerds that we are, and kind of fell in love with the scene, fell in love with coffee. Um, I would I remember like really as when I got approved to be on the bar, they started giving me opening shifts, and I remember like racing to work early so I could like set up all the chairs, set up all the waters, and bring all the chairs down and tidy up the space so I can spend as much time as I could on the espresso machine. Just like there's something about that quiet morning, like before the world's awake, it's just you and the coffee, you and the espresso machine. And I just love that moment, just like tasting, dialing in, and then knowing that a rush is going to come, just being ready for it. So um, I worked there for a few months, eventually got a job as like kind of a cafe manager at a brand new cafe called Cafe Dulce in Little Tokyo. Got to work with a guy named James Choi there. Helped open a pop-up, worked there for 2 years, and then started a business called Copa Vida. So I have some history with Copa Vida as well. Speaking of the competition, and worked there for 7 years, and got a chance to work with Steve and my best friend Sam, and really got to see a company grow from one cafe to a roaster to 7 cafes. Along the way, a few of us at the Copa Vida team, in 2018, we had a chance to open a brand for Walmart, which is kind of crazy. So we created a coffee brand for Walmart. We ended up opening up 8 cafes um, inside of Walmart's in Dallas. And the concept was really unique because, speaking of cold brews, like the whole concept was based on a cold brew extract. So it was a cafe completely based on the idea that we can make every coffee drink based off of this extract. And so we had no grinders, no espresso machines, no brewers. It was all based on this extract that we created. And all we had to do was dilute it to a certain amount for hot coffees, and then if it was an iced latte, or a latte in general, we would just add the milk, and that would be our drink.
And this was in
So
Walmart?
did that. Yeah, this was at Walmart. This was
Oh my gosh.
we did that for about a year, and inside of Walmart, we opened up 8 of them in the Dallas area. It was called Liftoff. It has since shuttered, and we tried to push it as much as we can, but eventually it just didn't work out. And eventually, when I came back to Copa, and then in 2020 left to start my own business, Be Bright Coffee. So yeah, so I mean, along the way, I feel like I've done like every part of the job in coffee. It's like, from bar back to barista to store manager or shift lead to store manager to retail area manager to trainer. And I feel fortunate enough to have learned a lot of the stages in coffee. So I feel like it equipped me to help me open my own business in 2020.
I'm curious to know when, you mentioned that you had that moment where you fell in love with coffee, right? Do you remember back then, was there a specific event or a specific moment where you feel like that happened? Because I mean, to go from drinking frappuccinos at Starbucks to now,
Yeah.
owning a specialty coffee shop is quite a shift. And surprisingly has happened to a lot of people that I've talked to on the podcast. But for a lot of people, it's like, there's like that one moment that happens, or sometimes, it's just a buildup of things that happen. So in the case for you, was it this buildup that happened, or was it this singular moment? Was it one competition where you realized, oh my gosh, this is something that actually I'd want to pursue for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 moments for me. The first moment was, well, prior to this first moment, I remember like coffee was the first thing in my life that like I voluntarily took my own time to study. Like prior to that, like I did not want to study anything. Like, I had to be forced to like open my book and read something to like get ready for my test or whatever it was. It was like it wasn't something that I did on my own. But coffee was one of those things. Like I just scoured the internet, like looking for resources to learn more about, you know, different things about coffee, whether it's steaming milk or doing latte art or espresso extraction. And this is before like I feel like a lot of the resources we have now were available. It was like you really had to dig deep to like find some gold or some like nuggets of like just really great resources for you to learn from. And so, there was this resource called Coffeed, COFFED.com. And that was like one resource I always looked into. But I remember like watching a lot of videos of like these coffee professionals or US, former US barista championships who would drink an espresso and then describe it. And then like they would say, yeah, chocolate, caramel, peanuts, man, that's so good. And I'd be like, okay, there's one of two things that's happening. Like one, they have an amazing palate, and I don't. Or two, they're a liar and they're just like making things up and like trying to convince the rest of the world that they're tasting these things, you know. Or
I've
three,
totally
like
been
this
there.
is like, yeah, yeah, or like, and so I was like, man, like what is it? And so the first moment I can think of was in the morning, one of the shifts at my first coffee shop. I was dialing in, and it happened to be the same espresso that this gentleman was talking about, and it was the same Black Cat espresso. And I was like, man, how is this guy having such a different experience than I'm having with the same coffee? Like, is it their machine? Is it the grinder? Like, what is it? And then it wasn't until like I experienced it for myself that I was like, whoa, like I can taste like Whopper, like the chocolate Whoppers. I can taste like maltiness, like some chocolate. I was like, this is crazy. Like I'm experiencing what that guy also experienced. And so that was very empowering. And I remember like, man, there's something really special about coffee that I want to share this experience with others. Um, I would say that was the first moment, and then there was another moment when I first opened up cafe helped open up Cafe Dulce. We were using a new coffee roaster, and I just remember I was just trying to figure it out. I was like, I'm just gonna keep tasting, and we were slow at the time because we were so new. Nobody was coming in, so we just had a ton of time to like just make espresso and taste it, and so it was during that time where I was just like tasting and tasting and tasting, and there was just one shot. We call it like the God shot, but there was a shot where like it literally tasted like a melted Snickers, like a Snickers that was just like melted and had manifested itself in a coffee form. And I tasted it, and it was just like so like apparently sweet and chocolatey and caramel sweetness. And I was like, what the? And I like shared it with my friend who was working with me, and I was like, could you try this? Like, tell me like I'm not tripping. And he had it. He was like, what the heck? And we were just both like, what's going on? And I feel like I've never had that same experience again, and I don't know what it is. If it's like if we were just tricking ourselves or if we just happen to have an amazing shot that one time. But I remember experiencing that and being like, man, like I want to pursue this, like not just as like a stepping stone to my career, but like I can see myself doing this as my career. So
Wow, actually, I relate to both of those with cold brew. I've had like both of those experiences happen to me. And I'm curious with your first one, how you said you're able to taste those flavor notes. What was it for you that led you to be able to do that? Because I had that same experience where I'm like, people are telling me that they're tasting, grapefruit and, Jolly Ranchers and stuff like this in a coffee. And the answer I got at the time is I was at a cupping. They said, well, do you eat Jolly Ranchers? Do you eat grapefruit? Do you eat
hmm
those foods on a normal basis? And I said, well, no. He said, well, there you go. That's why you can't really taste it in the coffee. So was that the same case for you, or what was the trick for you to be able to finally kind
yeah,
of
I
taste
mean,
those flavor notes?
I think palate development, a big part of palate development is tasting those things. So like the SCA, for example, has the flavor lexicon, and it has a breakdown of like how you can recreate those references for those different tasting notes. And so I think that's very helpful. And I've definitely partaken in those, definitely like further along in my career, which I think is really valuable. It is valuable because then you can draw, you have a reference bank you can draw from. You have flavor descriptors you can draw from. But I also think, like, for me, for my example, were things that I grew up eating anyways. Like, no one needs to know what a Snickers tastes like. Like, they all know. Like, everyone knows what a Snickers tastes like because
Well,
like
I'd hope
like
so.
most, yeah, exactly, right. Like with most children, you've had your plenty of your share of milk, Snickers. But for me, I think more than like knowing what things taste like, it was just like constantly tasting. And so when I train, especially with like new baristas who are starting to get into coffee, like, they'll dial in and then they'll make a mistake. They'll run the coffee too short, or they'll run it too long, and or they'll make a mistake and they just throw it away. And I'm like, that's like valuable insight right there. Like you can know what a bad shot tastes like, and you can know what and I feel like that's what I did a lot. I just like, if someone said like that's a quote unquote like bad coffee or a bad shot, like I just went ahead and like tasted it, and from tasting and from like just like overly or just like consistently tasting these different things, I feel like that's what really helped develop like my palate, helped develop like confidence in what I was saying, because without those things, I feel like I wouldn't be able to say, the things I tasted. Yeah.
Gotcha. So fast forward to now with Be Bright Coffee and the development of that. When you were putting together your company, how did you want it and how is it different from, other coffee shops or coffee companies that are out there, and kind of what principles of your coffee journey did you instill into that?
Yeah, I think one of our main things, like if you look at our on our website, if you visit us, our like the first few words you see on our website is coffee should be easy. And that's something that has been a mantra, personal mantra of mine for a long time, because I think the specialty coffee industry tends to overcomplicate things. And, sometimes it is justified, but I think sometimes it's just like a flex. It's like, I know so much about coffee. I'm just going to flex it on you. And like, it like just, I feel like it just goes over people's heads sometimes. And it's like, it doesn't, and it can, one, like either intimidate them, or two, it can just like make them feel like annoyed, like, ugh, like you're so snobby. And, I feel like to enjoy good coffee, you don't need that. And so one of our things is like, coffee, our main thing is we want coffee to be easy. And as a company, we're going to do everything we can to make coffee easy for you. And so if you look on our website, like our main call to action is to find your coffee fit. And the idea behind that is you take a quiz based on 5 simple questions. It's like, how do you like your coffee? Like, what do you use for brewing? What's your roast preference? What are some flavor descriptors that appeal to you? And then based on how you answer those questions, we match you with the coffee on our menu that we think you'll like. And so that's for us, an easy way to be like, choose here. We can help you choose a coffee and just answer these 5 questions, and here it is. And
Can I
then,
answer those 5 questions right now, actually?
yeah,
Can
let's
we
see
do it
what you
right now
get.
really quick and see what I would get?
Yeah,
I'm so curious.
I'm
Okay, so
curious.
what's the first one?
Let's see. I'll pull it up right now. All right. So the first question is, how do you take your coffee? Black, with cream or milk, with sweetener, or as decaf?
Well, I like to say once you go black, you never go back. So black for
All right.
me.
So black. And how do you make your coffee at home? And I'm gonna assume what you're gonna choose, but our options are coffee maker, pour over, French press, Chemex, AeroPress, mocha pot, espresso machine, cold brew.
Cold brew, alto cold brew, always.
And then what roast level do you enjoy? Light to dark. It's a scale 1 through 5.
Ooh, 4.
Cool. And then which best describes your favorite coffee? Classic and traditional, unexpected and sophisticated, fruity and floral, chocolatey and nutty, sugary and sweet, or something unique?
Chocolatey and nutty.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming. And then, do you like your coffee whole bean or ground?
Ground. I have a really bad
Ground.
grinder. I tell myself every year I'm going to buy myself a new grinder for my birthday or Christmas. It's been 4 years now. It still hasn't happened. So one day.
Got it. Well, you got paired with a coffee called Sojourner, which is our blend,
Mm-hmm.
our house blend,
Okay.
and it's currently that's kind of the blend that we actually recommend for cold brews. It's like very chocolatey. It's got some apple sweetness to it, and does well as a cold brew.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of roast profile, it is kind of like not too dark, but it's like on the richer side. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that actually sounds like something that I would like. And I don't know if that's something that you've noticed is even though, yes, I've been, drinking cold brew for 4 years and have been able to somewhat expand my palate, I still have like my go-tos. Like I still like a
hmm
chocolatey, rich, bold cold brew is just always going to be my preference. I don't know that would ever change no matter how much I expand my palate. Do you find that too with people that even, if you get to a point where, and maybe even the case with you, I'm sure your palate has expanded tremendously in your coffee experience. Do you still have like a preference of a coffee flavor that it's just your bread and butter, you always go to it, or it just always satisfies
yeah,
you?
I mean, I definitely like coffees that are what you as you described, like chocolatey, caramel, because those are like I feel like daily drivers. You can just drink it. It's like chuggable. It's like you just go to town with it. And I feel like coffees that are a little more fruity, a little more fruitier, or like a little more out there. It's like it's a treat. It's like, oh, that's nice. It's like, but I don't know if I would drink that all the time. Personally, I like to mix it up. I like to drink chocolatey. I like to drink a little fruitier. Sometimes maybe a little natural coffee. So yeah, that's the thing that I do enjoy about coffee. It's like I get to kind of choose what I want for the day.
Yeah, I like that you went with the approach of coffee being easy and also coffee being approachable too. People that are listening, some people are going to be very experienced with coffee, and then some people, they're brand new to all of this. I think, you're right in that sometimes it can be, at least I was a little bit frustrated when, I'd get a coffee and I couldn't taste those flavor notes or I didn't know which coffee to
hmm
get. So how can Be Bright help people along with their coffee journey? You have your quiz and you can pair people, but can they reach out to you? Do you have courses or tips on how to expand palates? What can Be Bright do to expand people's coffee
Yeah.
journeys?
I mean, I think the first thing we can do, and what we've already done is we sell our coffees in categories. So if you look on our website, um, you'll see that we have four categories. It's dark and bold, rich and smooth, bright and lively, and unique and surprising. And I think I don't think all coffees can fit under those things, but I think most coffees that you know the general public tends to enjoy can fit in those four categories, and they're not like these esoteric words or terms that like people don't understand. It's like right away, if I tell you a coffee's dark and bold, I think you'll know kind of like what that's going to taste like. Same thing with rich and smooth. And so like I think already people, because like one thing I've noticed over the years, and I've been working in coffee for 11 years now. What I noticed is that a lot of coffee is a very personal preference. It's like a drink that has a lot of personal preference. It's not a one taste fits all or one size fits all. It's like everyone has their style of coffee. Everyone has their ritual. I put 2 packs of sugar, 1 cream. I go black. That's all I do. Everyone has their own preferences, and I don't want to be as a coffee professional and as a coffee business owner. I don't want to be like that's the wrong way you drink. Like that's the wrong way to drink your coffee. Like however you drink it, we have a coffee for you. And so, dark and bold is going to be a coffee that people, if they want to add milk or add cream or add sugar, it's like it's got enough development, it's got enough caramelization with the roasting that and embody in the coffee that it'll handle your milk, it'll handle your espresso, your cream well. Same thing with our rich and smooth, like it'll do well with milk. But then there are people who love more fruitier, more citric forward coffees, and those coffees tend to not do well with milk, and so we have coffees for those kinds of drinkers. And then we have those like, just like the highlight and showcase of the specialty world, which I would consider under unique and surprising coffees that you drink. You're like, whoa, I've never experienced these notes or these flavors from these coffees. And so I think to answer your question, the first thing we do is to help our customers is we sell in categories. And I know it's not unique to us for sure. And so, for us, we're just kind of like riding along the lines of like just trying to help our customers choose the right coffee. And so within those categories, we have multiple coffees under those categories. And so even visually, we could have 4 different coffees in our rich and smooth, but it'll all be under the green label, rich and smooth. And so I think even visually, it helps customers understand, okay, this is going to be this style of coffee. So in terms of other ways that we can help, like we definitely want we just passed a year old, and so we're still a very much growing business, and very new business. But one of the things that we do want to do is we want to become a place where we're a resource for our customers. So we've already created guides. So we have like a pour over, like a V60 guide. We have a cold brew guide on our website. But we definitely want to do more of those things, and also frame it in a way that's easier for people. And so a lot of our guides, sometimes if you don't have a scale, that's okay. We put like recommendations, like use X amount of tablespoons, like even things like that. We try to keep in mind, because not everyone has invested in a scale. Not everyone has access to these tools that other people might. So that's one of the ways we want to help guide our customers. And we as we grow, definitely want to create more videos, more tutorials, more education driven things, so that we become a guide for people who are interested in coffee.
And not only are you a year-old coffee company, but you are a year-old coffee company that has won first place in a cold brew competition too. And I really want to get into this because I very much remember your cold brew and how great it was. And I'm curious to know too, because you mentioned, like you said, like people have such different coffee tastes, right? And there's no like right or wrong necessarily with that. And so with that mindset going into a competition, right, where you have us 3 judges, we all probably have different ideas of what makes a good cold brew for us. How did you go into the competition then with the cold brews that you brought, your original and then your signature?
Yeah, when it comes to competition, like I also have experience competing in the U.S. Barista Championships, and so I did draw a lot of my experience having competed in those competitions, um, just like understanding how competitions work. And so for me, one of the things that I always do when I enter a competition is I read the rule book. Like that's the first thing I look at. And so
Yeah, that's a good
I look
idea.
at the rule book. Yeah, right. That's a good, because there are some competitors who showed up without a signature beverage, and I was like, all you had to do is read the rule book, and like
Yeah.
that, like not having a signature beverage literally lost you like 30 points or 40 points or something like that.
But it worked out
And
in
so
your favor. So
yeah, I know, but like, and so one of the things I do is I look at the rule book, and I look at the score sheets and the criteria for the score sheets, and I build my routine based off of that. And so point by point, I try to hit everything that they're asking for, what the judges are looking for. That way, I can squeeze as many points as I can, and then I feel like that kind of sucks the fun maybe out of it. But like for me, like entering competitions is about like winning it. And so looking at the the score sheet, looking at what the judges were looking for, I felt like our Mexico geisha from San Fernando Ejidos was going to do well because it was just like, exotic, unique. I had an idea of what most people were going to compete with in terms of their cold brew. It's going to be probably chocolatey, probably, caramel, decadent, so I just wanted to present a coffee that was maybe a slight break from that. And so our Mexico was going to be very tropical, tropical fruit notes to it. It's going to have mango, all these notes that like you weren't tasting throughout the day. And so I wanted our judges to have that experience with this cold brew. So that's why we decided to use that, and also to highlight the flavors in that coffee. We did a shock brew to further enhance some of those fruitier notes to the coffee.
What are your feelings on, you called it a shock brew, which I've never heard before. I've always heard flash brew. What are your thoughts on flash brews? Are you a fan of them? Does it depend on the coffee? Do you think it still makes it a cold brew? I'm just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's funny because we were having some backstage conversations about it because some people were salty that, I had one with a flash or shock brew. And I personally love shock brews because I feel like you get the best of both worlds. You get some of those harder to extract flavors that are available at room temp, that you can only get with hot water. And my argument to the people who say that's not a cold brew is hey, look, for 90 seconds of its life, it's hot. Rest of the time, it's cold. Okay, so like 18 hours or 17 hours and 58 minutes and 90 seconds of its life is cold. 90 seconds of its life is hot. Like it's still a cold brew through and through. For me, that's how I feel. Because it's different if you were to brew it hot and then extracted it and then brought it to a room or a cold temperature. Like it tastes different. But the fact that you're brewing it hot and then you're shocking with ice water with the coffee grinds, it does present a different experience than a traditional cold brew and a traditional, hot to cold method. So that's my defense of shock brewing.
I would kind of agree with that too. I think I'm at the point now, yeah, if there's a flash brew or a shock brew, as you call it, I kind of like that shock brew because it's almost like
Yeah, because it's
shocking
hot and then
coffee.
you're shocking it with ice water. And that's for me when I do that recipe, it's very imperative that we go from hot to cold very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is probably the key to doing it, is that you have to go from hot to cold right away. You can't stay in this lukewarm zone of like 120, 110. It's got to go from hot to cold as soon as you can.
I could just picture the little coffee particles going ah! As they get shocked by the water. I love that. I'm gonna call it a shock brew from now on, just because of that. So thank you. You gave me some new terminology.
Yeah.
But then also your signature drink that you came up with was so creative. And the way I think a lot of people don't notice this, but with the change in the cold brew competition, right? It used to be you just had the original cold brew. And with this change that we did, it's about the presentation as well. That's a huge part of it, not just the cold brew, but the way you presented it. And of course, your presentation was fantastic, which I'm assuming is because you read the rules, so you knew what to do in your presentation. But also your drink was really unique and how you did it all. Just take me through how you came up with that.
Yeah, I think just having the experience working or doing competitions in the past, like whenever I worked on a signature beverage, I always let the coffee itself dictate where that drink was going to be. And so instead of having a signature beverage in mind and then choosing your coffee, I always taste the coffee and then figure out what ingredients or what style of beverage would further enhance those flavors. All right, and I one of the things I said during my competition was, I think one of the greatest features of a signature beverage is that those ingredients only work with that coffee. Like if I were to use the same ingredients that I did for my signature beverage with, let's say, a different coffee, let's say maybe it was a chocolatey coffee or coffee that didn't have tropical flavor, tropical fruit notes, it wouldn't have worked. It would have competed with each other. But having tasted the ingredient, or having tasted the cold brew, um, I felt like it was such a fruity tropical cold brew. I wanted to just play on those notes and like just go wild with it and enhance it further. And so that got me thinking of tikis, like tiki drinks. And I was like this cold brew extract, or the concentrate would do so well as a tiki, a tiki beverage. Of course, non-alcoholic, because that was one of the rules, right? And so I started, brainstorming about like presenting a tiki cold brew drink. And so I went to a local, like a local cocktail store, and I just bought a bunch of different ingredients and non-alcoholic spirits. So one of the things that I purchased was three different non-alcoholic distilled spirits from a company called Seedlip, and a lot of them had different, like different flavor notes to it. So one was like more citric driven, one was more um, herbal, and one was more just like well rounded. And so I ended up using the well rounded one because it really opened up the cold brew in a way that the other ones didn't. And so we start. So the first thing we did was we instead of cutting the cold brew with water, we cut it with a 1-to-1 ratio of cold brew extract with a one equal part seed lip. I forget the name now. It's like Grove 94 or something. But and so what that did was it really enhanced that cold brew, right? And then we added some passion fruit syrup, or jat, which is like a kind of almondy, like decadent sweetness component to the drink. We added some pineapple juice, a hint of a squeeze of lime, and I think that's it. And I shook it up, and of course, like along the way of brainstorming, we had like a lot of different iterations, but we kind of dialed into this recipe that we ended up going with. And I tasted it, and like I taste I we were like we so the competition, I believe the day I competed was on Monday, and we like nailed it on Saturday. We dialed it in on Saturday, and we're like, all right, we're ready to go. So my wife and it was mainly my wife and I. We were just like tasting cold brew drinks after cold brew drinks, and we got to the recipe that we did towards the end of the night. We're like, all right, I think this is it.
Yeah, I remember sipping it, and me and Nick, the other judge, we just went to each other and were like, whoa, this is incredible. Because it's
Isn't there
so,
a rule about like poker face? Like you're supposed to be like,
whatever. For a good cold brew, I'd break that rule, no problem. Because those flavors are hard to do in a cold brew. Anytime you use, I
yeah,
remember, so I mentioned anytime you are using acidic flavors with coffee, it can get tricky, right? Because you can start to oxidize it, and then you get this kind of funkiness to it. So you have to be careful.
hmm
Anytime you bring the acidity, it has to be some sweetness to counteract that. So with the pineapple and whatnot, I mean, I was a little worried at first when you were putting it together. I'm like, oh man, I feel like this is either gonna be like hit or miss. And then clearly it
yeah.
was a hit. It was just phenomenal. And then of course you won.
Thank you.
And then you served it, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. The next day you serve it at your stand at Smorgasbord.
yeah. So along with our website, we have Smorgasburg, and I think one of the things that people are really interested in when they see like competitions is like I know I was when I first started looking into competitions. Like I always wanted to taste the winning drink, or whatever the signature beverage was. That sounded really delicious to me. And so, I was like, we want to share this with our guests. And so for a few weeks, we served the winning combo. So you can either buy just the cold brew, or you can buy the winning combo, which is the cold brew and the signature beverage, or you can just drink the signature beverage, which we call the fresh start. And so we served it at Smorgasburg, and people loved it. Like they just like drank that up. Just yeah, it was awesome.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Yes. So where can people find you? You mentioned you have a website. and smorgasbord, which can you just briefly, for people that don't know what that is, can you share what it is? Because
Yeah.
it still blows my mind what it actually is. I can't believe something like this actually
Hmm.
exists.
Yeah, I know. It's so Smorgasburg is a gathering of a lot of different restaurants or food concepts, and it's in downtown LA. It originates from New York, and it's originally from Williamsburg. That's where the whole idea of like combining, because a smorgasbord is like a gathering of like all these different things, and so they combined that with Williamsburg and smorgasbord. So it's like smorgasburg. So it's like everyone says it like their own way, but smorgasburg eventually came to LA, and we happen to know the general manager Zach Brooks, and he was a customer. He was a subscriber of ours, and he when after the pandemic or during the pandemic when because they had shut down, right? Understandably so, but when they reopened, they asked us if we would want to become the coffee vendor for Smorgasburg, and not gonna lie, I had to really consider it because having done retail for 10 years, like I wanted a break from retail. Like I was kind of done doing retail for a little bit, but
Mhm.
um, I'm glad that we did it because it's just been an awesome event to be a part of, and we've been there every week, starting from 4th of July till last week was our last week for this year. It's at the Row in downtown LA, and it happens every Sunday from 10 to 4. And the best way to find us is look for the longest line, and that's us.
I don't think people
We're
realize too,
yeah,
like it's like something like what 100 vendors or something like that.
yeah,
It's just crazy. I remember when I went for the first time, I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know like
yeah.
I
It's
think I
crazy.
was starving because I didn't know what I wanted to eat. There were too many
Yeah, yeah,
options.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like a
You
blessing
definitely
and a
want to like take
curse.
your walk around, and then choose what to eat, or you can just visit us at Be Bright first, and then we'll give you a
Yeah.
breakdown. Like these are just spots to go. Because
Yes,
for us, like as
absolutely.
vendors, we have like the most valuable trade currency, which is cold brews. I literally walk around with cold brews, not knowing what I want to eat, and I go like, "All right, that's what I want to eat. Hey, you guys want to trade for cold brew?" Like, yeah. So I trade a cold brew for like a lobster sandwich. I'm like, yes. I think I
Hey,
won
you
that trade.
know. I'm flattered too that it's cold brew and not like a hot coffee.
Yeah,
That warms my heart.
exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Nick. I just what's one last tip you would give then for people that are listening? And again, we have a mixture of people that know the coffee space really well, people that are brand new to coffee. What would you say is your one tip, being somebody that has been in the coffee industry in different roles now, and clearly has a passion for it and has, a growth journey with it as well? What would you say your one tip is?
Mm. Okay, yeah. So I think, one of the things for me, like personally, is humility. Um, I think um, as when it comes to anything with like senses, like I think whether you're a taster of wine, a good taster of food, or a good taster of coffee, like there is a certain level of reverence that people give you. Like, wow, you can taste things that I can't taste, or you can describe things that I can't describe. And I think there is always a reverence for that, for people who are good tasters, or anything with their senses. And I think you can easily let that get to you and become like this like very prideful person. But for me, like my personal heroes in coffee, or my personal friends in coffee, have always been people who that I look up to and admire, or have always been people that have both the experience and knowledge, uh, um, paired along with humility. And I think that really goes a long way. It's just very admirable, I think. So yeah, as you get into coffee, or as you either get into coffee as your career or as something that you really enjoy, like it's important to stay humble. Like always stay humble, and don't be the snob that like you can easily become.